Okay, so today we are a couple of days away from Leila Seder. It's March 22nd, and Erev Shabbat, this coming Shabbat will be Erev Pesach. So we said let's have a run through the Seder, and I'm going to do it with the Haggadah that I edited as a family Haggadah. Uh, what's different about this Haggadah? There are so many Haggadot in the market, and that could also be one of them. Is that I sort of highlighted the texts that I think are important to say by writing them in much larger font than the rest of the text. So if you just read that, which is in large print, this is the essential Haggadah. The truth is that the essential Haggadah is only 3 words. It's Pesach, Matzah, Umaro. As I mentioned before, Rabban Gamliel says, if you didn't say those 3 words on Pesach, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Hence, if you did say those 3 words, you did fulfill your obligation. That's what you have to say. Sorry. You say, if you didn't say it, you did not fulfill your obligation. Meaning that if you did say it, you fulfilled your obligation. That's the only thing you have to say. And there are included some songs that my wife teaches in elementary school, and the kids love them, and maybe I'll be able to sing them also. We'll see. It's not guaranteed. So here's the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Okay, so we'll run through it, and I'll send the recording later, hopefully before Pesach, so people can review that. So, Ka'arat Seder, that's one way to put it. Some people just put it, clockwise from wherever you start. Karpas is celery, beitzah, egg, boiled egg, which is a symbolism of symbolically korban Haggadah. That's the additional korban that the people brought at the time of Bet HaMikdash, because the Pesach korban wasn't enough for everyone. There was not enough meat in one lamb for a family, so they would bring an additional korban called korban Haggadah, and in memory of that korban, we eat the boiled egg. It's like another source of protein. Zroa, a shank bone, or some put a chicken leg, roasted chicken leg, is in memory, or as a symbol for the korban Pesach itself. Now, the karpas, the haroset, and the memelach, the celery, the haroset, the sweet mix, and the salt water are actually all connected to the minageh seudah, to the way people used to eat in the past in a banquet, and that's dipping the vegetables in sauce. So some would do it only with haroset, some with salt water. Salt water was meant to kill bugs in the vegetables. So at a fancy meal, you dip it first in salt water just to kill the worms or the parasites in it, and then in haroset. But over the years, each one of those elements received its own symbolism. So karpas, celery, according to some, reminds us somehow of the hard work. Hazeret also is bitter. Memelach is tears. Haroset is like the mud or the mixture from which they made the bricks. It's all beautiful symbols. But basically, really, this is a nice table plate, a nice table set for a fancy meal in antiquity. And maror, the bitter herbs, matzot. The matzah, some people put the matzah in the middle, some people put it on a separate plate, to each his own. So I left this open, which each one with this tradition, you could write and draw before Pesach, how you're going to do it. We have simanim for the seder. This is according to the Sephardic tradition. I think the Ashkenazi is a bit different, but it's the same order. Kadesh uhatz, karpas yahatz, magid rachza motzi matzah, maror korech, shulchan orech, tzafun berech, halel nirtzah. Our tradition is to sing it in the same melody that we sing the prayer for the rain. Kadesh uhatz, karpas yahatz, magid rachza motzi matzah, מאור כורך ושולחן עורך צפון ברך הלל נרצה. And what are these simanim? Kadesh is we make the kiddush over a cup of wine. We wash our hands to eat celery. That in memory of the ancient tradition of eating appetizer before the meal that has disappeared in Babylonia but reappeared today. Yahat is breaking the matzah without eating it. Magid, saying the Haggadah. Rohza, washing hands to eat bread. Motzi matzah, saying hamotzi over the matzah. Maror, eating the maror. Korech, you eat a sandwich of maror and matzah, and then you dip into the haroset. Shulchan orech, you set the table. Tzafun, and you eat, obviously. Tzafun, you eat the last piece of matzah, the afikoman. Barech, birkat hamazon. Halel, finishing the recitation of Halel. Nirtza, it's a short prayer that says, May Hashem accept our tefillah willingly. The Kiddush this year is special because it's on Motzei Shabbat. So we say the usual three brachot, which are the bracha over the wine, Borei Pri HaGefen, the bracha to emphasize the importance of the day, Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, Borei Meorei Ha'esh on the first night because it's Motzei Shabbat. And there is usually we say Meorei Ha'esh on Motzei Shabbat because of the transition from the rest of Shabbat to the world of action. And since we move from Shabbat to Yom Tov, that on Yom Tov we're allowed to use fire, we say this Bracha Borei Meorei Ha'esh to mark that transition from complete rest to partial rest on Yom Tov. We say the Havdalah Bracha of distinction, the ability to distinguish between sanctity and lack of sanctity, light and darkness, etc. But usually we conclude Hamavdil ben Kodesh lehol. We praise Hashem would distinguish between the holiness of Shabbat to the mundane quality of the weekdays. But on Neder LaSeder, we're going to say Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh, between the holiness of Shabbat and the holiness of Yom Tov. Here, the letters, the words that are in bold print are what you should say. I mean, if you can't say the whole Kiddush, it's okay to say just Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Hamavdil Mekodesh leKodesh. Or you could say the brachot of the Kiddush in English. I decided this year to translate Baruch Atah Hashem as thank you Hashem, and as a word of we're not saying that Hashem is Baruch. Some people stated you are blessed or you are the source of blessing. But I think the Baruch Atah Hashem please simply means thank you Hashem. We praise you Hashem. When they say I bless you, meaning may you be blessed, means that I thank you. So we thank Hashem for creating grape and wine. We thank Hashem for sanctifying Am Yisrael in the holy days, for creating fire, for the power of distinction between the holiness of Shabbat and of Pesach, and for bringing us to this day. That's the Shehayanu. Then you drink the first cup reclining. The reclining is symbolic, meaning you don't have to lie down, you don't have to pour it down your throat like that. It's symbolic because people in antiquity used to recline while eating in a banquet. And as I mentioned in our previous discussion, that was the way of Chachamim to tell people after the destruction of the temple to not give up. Or in other words, dare to dream, believe in yourself. So today we don't need to recline completely. That symbolic reclining reminds us of where we were and where we are today. I wrote also here, one person can drink wine to represent all participants. The quantity is about 3.4 fluid ounces. If no one at the Seder can drink wine or grape juice, replace it with your favorite drink. So it's the idea of drinking wine and grape juice is if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you don't have to, or if it makes you suffer, you don't have to drink and replace it with something else. Then we wash hands. There's no need to say bracha. You dip celery in salt water or a mix of lemon and orange juice. That's the Iraqi tradition, and you say the bracha. I wrote here this: you can eat as much celery as you want. This is also the time to serve fresh vegetables and cold drinks, and to serve the children small portions of food. This way, no one feels hungry or thirsty during the Seder. eat the boiled egg. Some people eat it towards the end of the seder of the Haggadah before Motzi, but that's a problem because you already ate matzah and the sandwich, and now you're going to eat, and the egg in the middle doesn't really settle with us. And in the beginning of the seder, it's necessary. So it is in memory of the additional sacrifice brought on Pesach to provide meat for all participants. We say zecher lekorban hagigah, in memory of the additional sacrifice, and shakol yahatz. There are different traditions on how to break the matzah. Don't bother with them. I mean, do whatever you do, it's fine. Whatever you learned, whatever your tradition is fine. Usually people break the middle matzah and you keep the larger half to the afikoman. Why do we break the matzah? Because the matzah, the idea of the matzah is the bread of poverty, a bread that is made in a rush, you don't have time to eat, and you don't have much to eat. So on Shabbat, and usually we, in every meal, we try to say bracha over a whole loaf of bread. Because a whole loaf of bread connotes wealth. I'm wealthy, I have a whole loaf of bread. To eat a broken piece, like to say bracha when there's a broken bread in front of you, means that something is missing. And that's in memory of the poverty and the suffering they had in Mitzrayim. I think mentioned in several classes that my understanding, the way I studied the history of bread, is that the Israelites in Egypt did not know how to make bread, and it was the priests of Egypt who would provide them with bread once in a while. So bread was associated with the paganism, whereas matzah was their bread. So on Pesach, we dissociate ourselves from Egyptian paganism. In our tradition, the afikomen is wrapped in a scarf, and the children wear it across their chest as a sash in preparation for manishtana. So we give the afikomen to the kids. Other traditions, the mesader, the person who does the seder, hides the afikoman, and the children have to find it. Both traditions are meant to keep the kids alert and engaged in the seder. Our tradition, after the kids do what they do as we will see with the afikoman, they go and hide it, and the adults have to find it. So here I wrote this. The text of the Haggadah is quite long. You can choose to say only the sections in large print. And of course, if you follow your own Haggadah, you're seeing what to do. Magid, you uncover the matzot that are up until now are hidden. You raise the seder tray and you recite halach ma'anya. The word halach ma'anya is usually translated as bread of suffering. I translated, this is the bread of testimony and of suffering, which our forefathers ate in Egypt. The suffering is the poverty, the slavery. They had to eat in a rush. They didn't have time to prepare their bread. But it's also the bread of testimony, because the word ana in Hebrew means to testify. So by raising this piece of bread, we testify, we attest that Hashem has delivered us and fulfilled his part of the covenant, and therefore we are also committed to our part of the covenant. And actually, in every point of transition in Jewish life, we tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That happened in historical transitions, such as the leadership passes from Moshe to Yeshua, from Yeshua to the elders, when they reinstituted the establishment, the leadership at the time of Ezra, but also in personal points of transition in time, such as when you bring the first fruit that marks a completion of a cycle in your fields, and on Pesach. So telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is a fundamental part of our existence as a nation, and that's the basis for our covenant with Hashem. So the word halach ma'anya is, like I said, the matzah is my witness that Hashem created us as a nation, and therefore we are following the guidance of Hashem. It's a reciprocal, a mutual contract. And we say, let all who are hungry or needy come and join us for the Seder. May we celebrate our freedom next year in Israel. I suggested before Pesach to write here your thoughts about this statement of the bread of poverty. But also people could write here my personal exodus. Where did I feel that I was in a narrow place and Hashem delivered me and brought me into the open. I think we all have moments like that in life. At that point, we remove the Seder tray and announce that the Seder is over. Now, it's not a surprise anymore because the kids are so well prepared for it. So if you want to present your own surprise, I wanted to say, bring something that looks like bread but really is matzah, but nobody will be surprised anymore because today there are so many things that otherwise we would have considered hametz when you were kids, like there's cookies, cereals, rolls. I was in Israel on Pesach and there was burekas and croissant, all kosher for Pesach. So the kids will be surprised when you bring them. To the contrary, my wife, teaching in second grade, finds it difficult to explain to the kids what is the difference between hametz and matzah because they see the same ingredients all year. Anyway, at that point, we pour a second cup. That's the Iraqi and some Sephardic traditions. The children leave the room with the afikoman wrapped around their chest. They come back from the youngest to the oldest with pillows on their backs. They are now Bnei Israel coming out of Egypt. The adults ask them and they answer, מאיפה באתם? ממצרים. ולאן אתם הולכים? לירושלים. ומה יש לכם בשק? מה נשתנה? Where are you coming from? From Egypt. Where are you going to? To Yerushalayim. What are you carrying? We're carrying the מה נשתנה. מה נשתנה literally means, why is that night different? But the four sentences that's following the question are not answers, they are questions. The story of the Haggadah is the answer. And that's why I put a question mark at the end of each sentence. The question is not how is that night different, but why is that night different of all other nights? Why do we eat matzah and bitter herbs? Why do we recline? Why do we dip the celery and the bitter herbs? The original question were different, and this is an adjustment made in Babylonia in the 4th or 5th century, where people didn't use to dip, people didn't use to recline. You could create your own questions. It's okay. I didn't put it here, but it's valid. If the kids want to ask different questions, right? For example, why in all other nights we are calm and happy around the table, and today everybody's nervous, right? That's a good question. You tell them we're nervous because we're afraid that maybe there's a piece of hametz hiding somewhere, lurking in the shadows. But no, any question is good. Another thing which I mentioned, I think, in the previous class is that those questions originally were recited after the meal, because only after the meal the kids would see, oh, we only ate matzah tonight. We dipped twice. We ate bitter herbs. We reclined. They can't ask these questions before the Seder, but because of human folly, meaning that when the Haggadah was recited after the meal, it ended up not being recited because people would fall asleep with coma, with food-induced coma after the meal and wouldn't say the Haggadah. So the rabbis moved the Haggadah to before the meal. So then you replace the Seder plate and you recite that, and this is what I left in large print. Avadim היינו לפרעה במצרים, ויוציאנו אדוני אלינו משם ביד חזקה ובזרוע נטויה. We were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, and Hashem took us out of there with a mighty hand. And in smaller print, it says that if we would not have left Egypt, we would still be there, meaning we wouldn't be a nation because we would have been totally assimilated into Mitzrayim. So we owe our existence as a nation to the Exodus, and that's why we keep talking about that. It is like I said, a fundamental element of our existence, and also that we had to go through the suffering to understand what it means to not have freedom. So those two songs are inspired by my wife. She teaches it in school. So the one is the song of the slaves, and one is the song of Bnei Horim. So this song goes like this: Avadim, אנחנו עבדים, החיים שלנו קשים ומרים, יום ראשון עבודה, I don't sing it very well, but the idea is, יום ראשון עבודה, יום שני עבודה קשה, I'll send you the link of with my wife singing it. She does better work than I do. יום רביעי, אבל זה לא, יום רביעי אין הפסקה, יום חמישי אין מנוחה, יום שישי עד העבודה. So in Mitzrayim there was no Shabbat. They worked every day, and that's why in the Ten Commandments the Torah tells us that you should keep Shabbat because Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim, and you appreciate freedom. Then this is a famous song, Avadim, the song of the freed slaves. Avadim hayinu, ata bene chorin, bene chorin. Okay, I see. Does anyone have questions up till now? Because I've been running through. Okay, good. If you do have questions, I see I see the chat blinking, but I can't do it while I'm on this on this track. So if you do have a question, raise your hand or ask me. Okay.
Rabbi, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Okay, it's just a little question. You talked about the priests in Egypt who had the bread that rose. Well, what was the showbread in the temple? Was that a risen bread also? Was that not?
No, it was matzah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I think that the insistence of the Torah that there would be no bread in the temple, always matzah, the temple always had to be matzah, is a rejection of Egyptian paganism. Yeah. Okay, and then we have the story of the five rabbis who sit in Bnei Brak and they speak about the Exodus all day, all night. Then the students come and say, it's time to read the Shema of the morning. It's an interesting story. Some read it as the importance of telling the story of the Haggadah. Others say that is a political gathering, that the rabbis were talking about what do we do with the Roman government? Are we going to rebel? Are we going to acquiesce? And the Talmidim said, gentlemen, it's time to do something. Igi hazman kriyat shema. Don't just sit and talk. That's one opinion. And if that is true, that's my interpretation of the second part of this is when Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I never had the merit to hear the Exodus being recited at night. Of course it was recited at night, but what he means is that people sank into that darkness, into that state of mind of despair after the destruction, and they feel there's no Yetziat Mitzrayim anymore, and that it is only God who will bring the redemption. But Ben Zoma came with this interpretation and said, no, you have to remember the Exodus day and night. The day is when you're in a good situation. Night is when we're the night of Galut. So I think that's sort of a political message, but also an inspirational message to the nation. Then we have this section about the Arba'a Banim. We chant, the Iraqi tradition is to chant this pasuk together. Everybody sings it like in that manner. Baruch hamakom, baruch hu, baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael, baruch hu. And then the rest of the Haggadah anyway is recited in a certain tune like Ta'amim. כנגד ארבעה בנים דיברה תורה, אחד חכם ואחד רשע ואחד תם ואחד שאינו יודע לשאול. So I depicted the Rasha as just being angry. I don't know that wicked is necessarily someone who breaks this halakha or the other halakha. It's hard to tell. We don't know what people do behind closed doors. So to me, the rish'ut is more in the behavior. If you see someone who, I wouldn't say angry necessarily, but who's mean to others, that's where I see the rish'ut. In any way, those four sons are part of the educational take of the rabbis on the Haggadah. Really, the Haggadah is about education. Besides the covenant, right? Passing it on to the next generation and doing it as a multi-sensorial experience. Everything, all our senses are engaged in it, and it's a family activity. Everybody's together, we're talking, and we encourage the kids to ask questions. And that really is the message to us also, to the adults, because we have to remember, like, if we there's a story I'm going to tell you very briefly, because originally it's a joke, but I don't want to take too much time on that. But the idea is of a son and a father who walk together, and the son asks the question, one question, and the father says, I don't know. And he asks another question, and the father says, I don't know. And a third question, and I don't know. And then the son is about to ask another, and he says, Dad. He says, yes. No, no, it's okay. He says, what? He says, no, 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 it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. No, you wanted to say something. What do you want? He says, no, I have another question, but I don't want to bother you. And the father goes, no, no, ask me. If you don't ask, you'll never learn. Right? But so far you haven't answered any of your questions, right? So when we encourage the kids to ask questions, we really take the responsibility to know the answer, right? Or at least engage in the conversation. So we'll see the attitudes of those four children. I'm sure people. I know people have their different traditions of how to see them. I think I mentioned once that in my family we take parts of reading that around the table, and my grandfather established a package deal. He said, whoever reads Hacham, the wise son, must read Wicked as well. So nobody would label the people who read it as, you were this one or the other one. So you get 2 and 2. So the idea is that the different approach of people when they see events, when they notice change, how did they react to things around them? So the Chacham, the wise, the son or the child who's considered wise, reacts to the preparation for Pesach with curiosity. What is it that Hashem commanded us? And you just start teaching him. I put the En Maftirin Hara Pesach Hafikoman in small print. Because it says just teach him the halachot of Pesach. You don't have to read the whole thing. Teach him the laws of Pesach. But there is an importance of why they picked of all the halachot this specific one. Because as I explained previously, the afikoman was a practice of hopping, or dessert hopping. People would go from house to house to eat dessert. So the original family would not sit together. They might go to different houses, and everybody would be in the streets visiting people. And on El Seder, you don't do that, because the emphasis is on the family, on the nuclear family and their friends all sitting together. So the idea of community in one place. The wicked, the son, or Rasha, and wicked, mean maybe is good. What does he say? Ma avodah zot lachem. And there's a whole literature on that I'm not going to go into. But I think that the gist of his question is, which is in the Torah, why are you working hard? Ma avodah zot lachem. So it's a question of perspective. He sees the rituals of Pesach as a burden. And the answer is, that Hashem took me out of Egypt for me to do that, meaning that I don't see it as a burden. I see it as something important, something that I appreciate, as a gift even. The ability to do the Seder for me is a gift and not avodah. So it's a question of perspective. And I think that's also why in the original sentence says, Hakeh chinav, make his teeth blunt. It doesn't say break his teeth. You don't go tete-a-tete. You're not going to go aggressively against a child who challenges you. We say, no, you have to look at it through different lenses. Tam ma omer, mazot. So the simpleton, or someone who's not very engaged, he says, what's going on? Like I noticed something different, but I can't put my finger on it. So the answer comes with emphasis. Behozek yad. Hozek yad means with a mighty hand. He says, no, it's not a small thing. God took us out with the mighty hand. It's something powerful. It's just a powerful story. You can't just say, oh, what's going on? I went to my room in the morning and there was nothing there. And now when I came down after playing, being on my phone for 9 hours, I see that you put some matzah on the table, right? So I said, no, that's not it. There's something very, very deep here. I think that the rabbis concluded here with the most problematic child, the one who does not know how to ask a question. And it has nothing to do with intelligence, but rather with the just apathy, inability to to ass, assess and process what's going around him. So when I say this is the most problematic, not only for children, for adults as well, someone who's not rattled by anything, that it doesn't show peace of mind. It shows apathy. I don't care what's happening around me. And if we don't care what's happening around us, we will never bring change. It's for some people it's just a method of escape, and an escape from reality by not asking questions. So it says at ptach, open the door and bring him in. And it says v'higadat lebincha. You have to engage in. Don't say, you as a parent, don't take the easy path. Okay, good, it's great. My child doesn't ask questions. No, you have to make sure that he asks questions because you want him to be engaged. And it's the same answer as you give to the Rasha, sort of to the wicked son, which is to say, the difference between this one and the previous one in the answer to the simpleton is God took us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. The emphasis is on God. God is the one who took us out. With the wicked son and the one who doesn't know how to ask a question, the emphasis is on reciprocity, on mutual connection. God did this for me, and I'm doing this for God, or really for myself, right? So there is the one who doesn't know how, the one who's not asking question, is sort of a nuance of the Rasha, because you're not engaged in society, you don't care about what's happening, and you have to understand there's always a reaction and interaction between you and others. And now I'm going to only speak of mainly of the main sentences here. מתחילה עובדי עבודה זרה היו אבותינו, ועכשיו קרבנו מקום לעבודתו. Our forefathers were pagans, but God brought us closer to serve Him. ברוך שומר הבטחתו לישראל ברוך הוא. And we praise Hashem for keeping His promise to Am Yisrael. Those two sentences also include the idea of the chosen people, which has nothing to do with genetics. Unfortunately, there are people, even today, that think of the idea of the chosen people in terms of genetics. That, if you're a descendant of Jews, you're a good Jew, you're a Jew, and if you're not a Jew, and Jews are better than others just because they're born Jews. It's not true. The idea of the chosen people is this: kirvanu makom la'avodato. God chose Abraham because he had certain qualities that prepared him to be a leader. And when the nation was ready, God gave the nation the Torah. And the Torah is what crafted Am Yisrael as it is today. And people choose how to observe the Torah, how close they're going to be to the Torah. But even those who don't observe the Torah in the sense that people understand traditionally is the observance of the Torah, are still influenced by it. Am Yisrael is deeply informed and influenced by the Torah, mainly the idea of education. We are driven to educate and to learn. This is something that is integral to the Jewish people from thousands of years ago, before any other nation was engaged in such a comprehensive manner. Everybody had to learn. Everybody had to read. People were encouraged to teach, to write Hidushei Torah. And there's also an emphasis on social justice. Ve'ahavta l'chaverecha kamocha is a key component of the Torah. So the Torah introduced revolutionary ideas. Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, the idea that everybody rests on Shabbat, even ecology that eventually was forgotten, the equality of mankind. Again, ideas that in the past were forgotten because they were too revolutionary, but eventually they came back and they slowly changed the nation as a whole and affected other nations as well. So this is the idea of being part of the chosen people, and we should be glad that we were chosen, and but always invite others to join that faith and that understanding. Never look down at others. Um, so at that point, we cover the matzah and raise the cup, and we say "Vehi she'amda la'avotenu velanu." That promise, that covenant between Hashem and us, was what kept us. That was not one alone who tried to annihilate us, but it happened in every generation, and Hashem delivers us from them. We sing it in the Ashkenazi, famous Ashkenazi tune, Vehi she'amada la'avotenu velanu. And then Shelo Echad Bilvad Amad Aleinu Lechalotenu Ela Shebechol Tovado Omdim Aleinu Lechalotenu Ve'akad Baruch Hu Matzilenu Yadam Matzilenu Yadam. Now that today there's a very new, not new now, I think it's like 20 years in the making of Yonatan Razel, Veisha Amda. I'm trying to recall it from memory. Anyway, you should look up Yonatan Razel, and if you could find his interview where he tells about why he wrote this song. His grandfather was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And there's personal connection. It's hard to say the Haggadah and not to think about the Holocaust. Of course, we have to be joyous and happy, but this is really within our lifetime, or lifetime of our parents, that we were on the brink of annihilation in a way that would have destroyed the whole world. So this is I created this chart for the Haggadah that I made for my wife's class. So like here are our forefathers, and they are surrounded by names of countries that over the years tried to and it's interesting. My wife's student wanted to know who were the tyrants, because they knew that Mitzrayim was Pharaoh, Parasu Madai was Haman, Germania was Hitler, and they wanted to know what with Iraq and Russia, Poland, Portugal, England, France, Spain, Rome, and Greece. So it's like sometimes it's not one specific person, it's the whole nation. But some of them were surprised to know that England and France also expelled the Jews actually before Spain and Portugal. So with some of these countries where we have cordial relationships now, some better, some less, but it's a good thing to remember, not to think of them as enemies, especially they're not our enemies now, but to remember that at one point we do have to know that you have to fend for yourself. We have to do whatever is within our hand to help ourselves. Yes, Nathaniel, you have a question.
Yeah, my question is in regard to Israel's relationship to the nations that they lived in. Was there ever? I mean, we learn about like the difference between Jews who lived in Arabic Muslim countries versus Christian countries. There were cases where it was better for them under Muslim countries, but were the relationships back in those times ever as good as the relationships that Jews have in the countries they live in today, like in America or in like the UK or wherever? Like, were there ever times where the connection was as good as it is today?
I don't know that we can make this comparison. It would be unfair because that's a question for a seminar on history, because the whole world has changed. There are things that are done today that would not have been accepted that were done in the past that would not have been accepted today. So more we should ask, in relationship to other countries, how did Jews live in the past? So there were times in our history where the life of Jews under Muslim rule significantly better than those of Jews under Christian rule. And that's why if I go back to this in a roll back here, you really see that the one nation that we can think of as a Muslim nation that oppressed Jews, Iraq, is probably the most problematic, that attacked Israel directly, and then Mitzrayim, Egypt in modern times. But other than that, most of these countries are not were not Muslim. They are Christian. So yeah, we'll talk about it in we'll have to dedicate like a course of history to that, to see how how Jews fared in different countries. So we put down the cup, we uncover the matzot, and we say this pasuk: Arami oved aviv vayered Mitzrayma vayagor sham bimte me'at vayisham legoy gadol atzum varav. Yaakov went down to Egypt with a small family, which grew to become a great nation. The rest, there's a lot of writing around it, but it's really just an expansion of this story that we already know from the Torah. The Egyptians enslaved and tortured us. ונצעק אל אדוני אלוהי אבותינו וישמע אדוני את קולנו וירא את עוניינו ואת עמלנו ואת לחצנו. We cried out to Hashem and he answered us, or he heard us. He saw our suffering and our toil, etc. Let's see here. I have to fix that. ויוציאנו אדוני ממצרים ביד חזקה ובזרוע נטויה ובמורא גדול ובאותות מופתים. Hashem took us out of Egypt with mighty miracles. So this is if you want to read more, you could read more, but if you need just to speak about that, here are like, this whole thing is summarized in 4 sentences. Yaakov goes to Egypt, the Egyptians enslave us, we cry out to Hashem, and he take us out of Egypt with great might. And those are the 10 makot, the 10 plagues that God brought upon the Egyptians in Egypt. We know the makot, and this is a song that the children like to sing. It goes like that. That I think I know. I could sing it. It goes like that. And the colors also. I mean, that's my creative sort of talent here. Different colors for each makah. Dam tzfardea kinim haro, badever metu abehemot. לישראל היה טוב מאוד. Oh my God, kill me. Again, let's do it again. לצפרדע קינים הרוב, בדבר מתו הבהמות. לישראל היה טוב מאוד. אוי ואבוי. שן פורע ברד קולות, הרבה אכל את כל השדות, הלכו בחושך בלי לראות, השם יקרא את הבכורות. לישראל היה טוב מאוד. ואלו הן 10 המכות. And then you count 1, 2, 3. Now, here is a picture of the makot. If you want, today there are puppets, makot puppets, etc. And then the Haggadah goes on to say it wasn't just 10 makot, it was 50 or 200 or 250 makot. And here the question is raised, especially in today's generation. Aren't we a little too excited over the plagues? Really, it's not nice that we say that the Egyptians suffered again and again and again. The poor Egyptians, what did they do? Really, be honest. We should be honest, really. We're talking about a whole nation that enslaves another nation and many other people, right? And when their king is addressed and being told, please let my people go, he says, no, I will not let your people go. Now, what was the role of the Egyptians in all that? What did they do?
We don't really know.
We don't really know, right? There was one sentence that he could have said, a very well-known sentence. We were just following orders. Wait. I know that not everybody is going to like that answer, right? I want to say this. First of all, that we have to take into account that the story is exaggerated. There is a literary element to the story. But one way to read that, I'm not in favor of neither torture or inflicting pain upon people. But we have to also see that as an ongoing. Imagine the again, I'm saying we have to look at as an analogy the Holocaust. What the Jews went through in Europe would not have been possible without the collaborators of other nations, without citizens who lived next to the death camps and did nothing. Now, I think that this is a message that is contained in the way the 10 plagues are described in the Tanakh. And if people don't like it, you could remove that part of the Haggadah. You don't have to say it. That's not the essence of the Haggadah. The essence is of the redemption and Yetziat Mitzrayim. But to understand that, I think we have to think of the way the citizens were involved. At the end of the 10th plague, it is the nation who sends the Jews out, not Paro. It says, "Vatehezak Mitzrayim al ha'am lemeher l'shalecha min ha'aretz." It's up until that moment, I think they were hiding behind Pharaoh's back. He is the king, let him do what's necessary. At a certain point, they said, okay, we want you to let the people go. What would have happened if after the first plague, blood, where nobody was really harmed, it was just inconvenient, what would have happened if then the Egyptians would come to the king and say, we want you to let the people go, right? That's how I think about it. And I also think that if we don't take this story as historical truth, because there are a lot of questions around it, there's a symbolism in the 10 plagues, and I wrote about it once. And the symbolism is that the plagues are plagues that bother us. Those are our own plagues. We all have our peeves and things that rattle us and unsettle us. So blood symbolically is things that make our blood boil. Maybe it's anger. Frogs are very noisy. Maybe that's the people who upset us when they talk because we think they talk too much or they talk about things that are unnecessary. Lice is when we let things get under our skin. Darkness, when we don't see anything around us. So there are different things that plague us throughout life. And I think each could find a symbolism. What is Bechorot then? Makat Bechorot. The firstborn is a representation or an analogy of our greatest talent. The firstborn is always described in the Torah as the most precious fruit of the tree or of the womb to the parents. So my Bechor symbolically is my greatest talent, my greatest potential. And for someone to go through life and get to darkness, which is, in the words of Kohelet, very, very old ages, one can't even see anymore, right? And then realize that he missed the opportunity to realize his greatest potential, that's Makat Bechorot. So in that sense, the 10 plagues can be understood as a message to us personally to not let ourselves sink into slavery, but to redeem ourselves, not to let our life revolve around plagues and things that bother us, but rather see the light and take that bechor, take the talent, the potential that we have, and realize it. And with that, I want to conclude today on a good note, not on plagues, but rather on redemption. And on Wednesday, we'll continue with what is left of the Haggadah.